hard not to want to get out of your head these days with the head shops, alco pops, internet. Place your bet, have sex with a girl you've never met. Bet on soccer, go to coppers, shots of vodka, Jaeger bombers, caffeine, salpidine, benzodiazepines, overprescribed antidepressants, marketing to adolescents, billboards, legal highs, drinks industries advertise improperly. Probably it's part of our identity. Arthur Guinness, big business, the bloody 12 pubs of Christmas, marketing, staggering, come home for the gathering, buy it, eat it, fuck it, love it, clink it, think it, pop it, sink it, and most of all in Ireland, drink it. And everything will be grand. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now under the influence. Thank you. Thank you. 17 and a half years of not drinking, I developed some opinions about what alcohol brings to society and what it takes from society, you know? And I reflected back on myself, what alcohol took from me and what sobriety gave to me. For me personally, from when I stopped drinking, pretty much only good things happened in my life.
Alcohol features in your own story, so tell us how your relationship with it began.
Yeah, so I started drinking when I was 12, which is too young. Nothing that sinister about it. I just happened to be the youngest guy in my group of friends, and by the time I was 14, I guess I experienced sort of entry-level problems, got kicked out of school, stuff like that. That's how I ended up in Ireland. And then that sort of chilled me out for a while. Sorry, Pat?
But they sent you to Ireland because you have this problem, is it?
Kind of. I mean, I used to make
sending someone with a sex addiction to a brothel.
That's a better line. You nailed that one, Pat. My mother was raised in the proper Irish way. You know, she was raised by two alcoholics. And, see, that shouldn't be funny. This is the whole thing. That shouldn't be funny. And on one level, you say Ireland doesn't have a problem, but if it doesn't have a problem, why the fuck is that joke funny? This is the thing, you know. If you did that in America, they'd be like, oh my God, that is terrible. Whereas like half you guys in the crowd just went, sure, is there any other way to be raised? Isn't that's what childhood is? Most of the time your parents are angry, every now and then they come home happy, and you begin to associate affection with the smell of chips. Yeah, so we're here in Times Square, and I just wanted to, you know, ask people what they think of when they think of Ireland.
Beer, booze,
Beer.
Guinness.
Beer. St. Patrick's Day.
The Irish can drink.
One of the biggest days of the year to get drunk.
Drinking.
Drinking.
Shamrocks and leprechauns and beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beer was last. Normally beer is first.
Well, I thought it first, but...
Oh, you thought it first when you stopped trying to be polite? The identity of the Irish in alcohol was exported with its people, you know? You know, when they came over here, those people drank a lot, and then suddenly that reputation saying the Irish drink a lot. But it wasn't part of the culture. It was actually relieving the pain of poverty, you know? But I guess over time, when the identity begins to stick, then you embrace it as part of your culture. That is the evolution of that identity. Like, there's not too many other cultures that drink thinking that it's part of their identity. So, not for the first time in my life, I'm here in Rory Dolan's, McLean Avenue, on the border of the Bronx and Yonkers. This is the heart of Irish America, really. This is a big drinking place, I have to be honest with you. I want to take this material to people who are definitely not going to agree with me. Thanks. Thanks, Orla. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. It's great for all the Irish here. I mean, there's more Irish Americans, I guess, because people don't really immigrate here as much as they used to. How many people here came in the last sort of 3 or 4 years? All right, that's all the illegals. Get them. Go get them. Go get them, Jackson. Go get them. I tell you, Des, this great country, America. I came over here. I couldn't fucking believe it. They leave their money on the bar. You couldn't even leave your fucking pint on the bar in Ireland. Somebody would fucking take it.
If you're walking around in New York, it's not a French pub, it's not a German pub, it's not an Italian pub.
It's an Irish pub. Why? How did that happen that we became the go-to people for drinking?
The thing is, when you go abroad and Irish pubs, you don't see people falling around the place. The only people falling around in them are Irish people, which just goes to show we've exported the building, we've also brought the problem with us. We've kept it in our own bodies, because foreigners don't... The odd time they'll try and, you know, give it a go, but then they'll go, oh man, I drank so much last night, I'm not touching this stuff for a week, and they won't.
But anyway, one of the main reasons why I got kicked out of school at 14 was I had a serious problem with alcohol. So the joke is that my mother had this ingenious idea to send me to Ireland to go to boarding school. And needless to say, I was delighted, because essentially it's Disneyland for alcoholics. You know, maybe they saw the potential in my alcoholism and thought, let's make him the best possible alcoholic he could be. He'll never develop here amongst these pussies in America. If you ask me, I was an alcoholic from the day I started drinking. That's the truth. I just couldn't stop once I started. Like literally from the summer of 1988. Because I always remember that first time I got drunk in the basement of my friend across the street. I actually remember being on that corner under the street light, and there's a tree there in the corner. And I remember looking at the tree, and I don't know why. I remember thinking, finally, like this is what it's like to be normal. And I got the relief, and my God, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. You know? Just that relief. Oh. And you shouldn't need booze for that. Drinking shouldn't make you feel okay for the first time in your life. You tell people in Ireland you blacked out, they don't think you have a problem, right? Okay? By 13, I wasn't just blacking out, I was blacking out and wetting the bed from too much booze. Now, here's the thing. Last night I did the Broadway Comedy Club, right? It's on 53rd, just off 8th Ave. And I said I wet the bed from too much booze. And, like, you could see the whole room was going like, oh, my God. I can't believe that happened. It was like, I say that in Ireland, like half the crowd are just like, it's so true, it's so true. He knows us so well, he knows us. How does he know us so well? That happens when you're 20, you can have a laugh with your friends, you call up your friend like, Seamus, do you know that thing that happens to Padraig? Fucking happened to me last night, oh my God. The girlfriend is well pissed off. She said it was nice at the time, it was nice and warm, but she was freezing later on. Neither of my parents drink because there was a problem. My grandparents were all alcoholics on both sides of the family. There's so much alcoholism there. What was it like growing up, sort of being Irish in New York, in terms of how much alcohol was in your culture?
A lot. It was an accepted way.
It was just a norm. It just seemed to be the norm.
You don't have to be Irish to be an alcoholic, but it helps. That's still how people think, I believe.
You know, when we would get a call, Mom would get a call to say that, oh, the relatives are at Idlewild, JFK now. The first thing they did was run out and to make sure we had
Enough
whiskey
liquor.
and beer, that we had enough to drink, because God forbid relatives would come and you wouldn't have enough to drink.
It's just something that, you know, it's acceptable.
Yeah, it's part of the culture.
It's different than the Italians are.
Well,
but
I love that alcoholism doesn't run in our family.
Gallops.
It gallops.
Gee. Yeah, I mean, it's been a long, long time since I've had a drink, but I know that there's a point that you cross over and, you know, it's just not fun anymore and you're getting in trouble and you're depressed. I mean, I knew when I was 16 I drank too much. I don't have any desire to drink, and I kind of think that if I did start drinking, that I might become a very heavy drinker again.
Yeah, you might unleash the beast.
Exactly.
You know, Daddy was so unassuming, pious, but when he got the drink in him, he hugged and kissed us. Other than that, he was a wonderful, loving father, But he didn't demonstrate his feelings. He didn't hug us. He couldn't show his feelings unless he had the drink in him. I mean, I figured if I brought a guy, that Ma wanted me to bring a guy home named O'Connor or McGillicuddy, I was afraid, Des. I was really afraid. I didn't want to marry an Irish guy.
Really, why?
What's up? They were all the Irish drink. And they're alcoholics. That's kind of what I thought.
I think the Irish identity with alcohol goes back to the famine. The Irish coming off ships in worse condition than you can imagine. Part of it is the lack of any comfort, anything to soothe what they were going through. Alcohol is the most available drug. It's like the crack of the 1840s.
The whole social scene in Irish circles revolved around the bar. It wasn't like we had somewhere else to go. At night, if you wanted to see anybody, you left your apartment and you went to the bar. The longevity of it is what surprises me. When you see the horror on display around St. Patrick's Day with the drinking in the streets and the absolute debauchery of it all, it's really not an attractive scene at all. St. Patrick's Day, I've gotten to the point where I just don't leave my apartment. I just want to stay home because it's so much around getting wasted.
Contrary to popular belief, booze does not have to necessarily be a part of St. Patrick's Day celebrations. McGee Hickey found a place where revelers are deliberately sober.
In a nutshell, sober St. Patrick's Day is for anyone looking for an alternative St. Patrick's Day experience, whether you're in recovery or you're a mom with kids or you're just anyone who's tired of the insanity of it being hijacked by over-drinking. St. Patrick's Day in New York, the uncontrolled levels of drinking, particularly among young people, is out of hand. Quite frankly, the Irish Americans have allowed it to happen and putting up with the buffoon and the stereotype because I think any other nationality would have gone ballistic.
We find the stereotype offensive. That's not who we are. We're professionals, and we've, put our kids through college, and this is gratuitously attached to us because there's a part of the culture that's just, it's hard to get rid of at this point.
Yeah, the Irish don't emigrate here anymore, to be honest. They emigrate to Australia. The Irish are getting a bad reputation in Australia, so much so that it's come back to Ireland. Like in the Irish newspapers, stories about how the Irish have gone mental over in Australia. The Irish have gone mental in Australia. The Irish have lost the run of themselves in Australia. That's what they're saying. The Irish have lost the run of themselves in Australia, right? They've gone mental. Here's the reality. The Irish have not gone mental in Australia. They're doing exactly what they do at home, but to another culture that's fucking mental. The Australians, who actually have a bad reputation for binge drinking themselves, are going, wow, we thought we were bad, but this is fucking crazy, guys.
Sean, it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
I know. But it's breakfast time back home.
In New York, if you tell people, like, no, I don't drink, they're like, really? Are you in AA? You work in the steps? You have a sponsor? They're kind of like it's a positive thing, whereas in Ireland, it's like, do you want to drink? No, I don't drink. You're in that fucking AA, is it? Like it's some conspiracy-led organization created to fuck it up for everybody else. In fact, Ireland is the only country in the world where when you go to an AA meeting, there's people protesting outside, actually picketing. They're brainwashing you. It's only a phase. Why can't you just have the one? When people talk about recovery, everyone has different opinions on it, For me, I couldn't stop drinking on my own. It's very easy to put out a message, you just need to cut down, but it's definitely hard to cut down, and for people that need to stop, it's really hard to stop on your own. I like doing comedy to a recovery-specific crowd. Most of the people in the room have had some experience with addiction of some description, and I just think there's something about that, being able to joke about that. So I'll talk a little bit about my own experience and maybe take the piss out of recovery a little bit, which I'm a big fan of. A comedic celebration of being reborn here in the Rockland Centre.
So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to the man himself, Mr. Des Bishop.
Yeah. Thanks, Austin. My name's Des, and I'm an addict. 17. It's not a meeting. It's fine. You know, as far as the Rutland goes, or as far as you're concerned, like, what is addiction for you guys?
I suppose addiction is basically about the lack of control. Is the ultimate. You know, when you can't always stop when you say you're going to stop, or you can't always decide that you've had enough. If there are, you know, serious consequences for you or your family, well, then why wouldn't you stop? If you can't stop, then you obviously have a problem.
I went to the Rutland and I did a gig. We couldn't film the audience, but I did a gig to, you know, people that are in the Rutland and their families, right? So the addicts and the people that have been harmed by addicts. What a fucking gig that was. I said to the families, I said, oh, you must love the Rutland, you know? Here's this addict that's been destroying your life for years. They come here, and then 6 weeks later, they tell you what you need to do about your problems. Do you think that, like, Ireland is a tough place when you decide to change your lifestyle? Do you think that Ireland has greater challenges, or is that just a universal thing?
It feels like it is like challenging, particularly for the kind of the 20s to 30s. That kind of age group seems to have a real difficulty because, you know, everything that's organised, whether it's from sports or celebrations or whatever, like alcohol tends to be the centre of things.
When you don't drink, you become the outsider, you know? Because you feel like you need to do it to fit in. You don't drink in Ireland, you need a fucking medical cert. Oh, you're not drinking? Are you pregnant? Are you sick? Are you on antibiotics?
Alcohol is still the biggest drug problem in this country, you know. What makes me angry is the kind of the attitude to it, that it's not really that bad when it is that bad.
If we're so concerned about teenage drinking and teenage drug use, is it worrying that from what I can see, there's only one specific teenage treatment centre in the whole of Ireland?
Yeah, that's right.
The Ashling Centre?
Yeah, that's the only one.
Isn't that?
Does that say something? It does say something.
The Ashling Centre is a 6-week residential programme for adolescents from 15 to 21 years of age.
Is it just a lot more difficult to be a teenager in Ireland nowadays? And are you seeing that in the way that people come here?
When families arrive here, they're really in a state of crisis. You know, they're looking for somewhere to go, for some kind of hope. You know, can something be done with this person who's out of control? We ask family members maybe to have a look at themselves. A lot of parents in Ireland need to look at how they're drinking, you know, and what impact that's having on the young person. You know, if they see mum and dad falling in the door on a Friday, Saturday and Sunday night, what kind of an impact and what kind of an example is that going to give to young adolescents? There's no kid in primary school puts up his hand and says, I want to end up in a treatment centre. I want to hurt my family. I want to hurt the people close to me. I want to hurt myself.
I know this feels like a nightmare that you've ended up in here, but like, it really doesn't have to be a nightmare. Like, it can really just be the beginning of something quite easy, you know? Like, life is really easy when you stay clean, you know? Like, it's hard to describe, like, how you can just use this as, like, the beginning of, like, a really simple life, you know? Like, but, you know, you have to embrace it, you know?
I'd often ask someone coming in, I'd say, well, did you ever have dreams when you were 12 or 13? And they always light up, because everyone has them. And it's about going, what happened? What happened that you ended up where you ended up from a person who's telling me that they had these ideas? That's like, and do you want to get there? Yeah. And why weren't you able to get there so far? Well, I wasn't. I just wanted to have a good time, and it just took over.
At this time that you're dealing with now, it seems so, like, unbearable, unfathomable. You know, like, you just think all these things about how life is going to be impossible. So I'm 37 years old. I haven't drank or used drugs since I'm 19, and I assume you know me, which as this comedian, a confident public persona. But that is all based on the fact that I experienced this time, this crisis time, and came out the other end. and it's not actually as difficult as it seems, and it's not as harrowing as it seems at this moment. We sort of pretend that you could go through the amount of abuse that happened here. You could go through the amount of repression that happened here. You could go through all the things that a tiny island with a small population has dealt with, right? Revolution, famine. You could go through all those things thinking that, boom, they're just dealt with. But some of them are quite recent. But Ireland is famous for sweeping things under the carpet. And just because we stopped going to Mass doesn't mean we fucking dealt with it, you know? Just because we hoovered the carpet doesn't mean we fucking lifted it up. We've swept so much under the carpet here, it's 6 feet from the ceiling. You need to lift the thing up and fucking bait it out a bit. In fact, if there was one good thing about the Celtic Tiger, it's that we put a load of wooden floors down. Nowhere to fucking hide our shit.
When I hear politicians and people like talking about, you know, if you like, the rational approach to, you know, it's okay to have a few drinks, I would love to sit them down in here one day for a family day and listen to the reality of what it's like to have someone in your family addicted to a substance like that. Sit down and listen to a mother or a husband or a daughter or a son, you know, just talking about what it's like to be in my house when the addict is active. And while, you know, I think that would change a lot of people's attitude to it, you know.
Hi, how are you?
Hi,
How are you?
How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Well, the Rise Foundation is an organisation that I set up to support families who have loved ones who are in addiction. And the reason I set it up is when, you know, I went back to college after getting into recovery myself to be an addiction therapist. And in doing that, I went to train in the Rutland and then was kept on as a locum therapist. And I got working with the families there and saw the heartache and the devastation. And I realised that the family members needed their own support away from the person in addiction.
Well, I had lived with an alcoholic for 18 years. I had left him and taken the kids, who were young teenagers at the time, and tried to go back. And there had been all those efforts that you make to try and keep a relationship going in spite of addiction. And every moment of it wasn't bad. In fact, there were some very good years before the alcoholism took hold. And he was a wonderful father when the children were small. And then when he went, I fell apart completely. There's a huge sense of, you know, failure, because even in the midst of all that stress and heartbreak, you still have a kind of hope that maybe he'll stop drinking. When he left and I realised that this is never going to be, we're never going to get this family back, I was really in a very bad way. Obviously, I knew Frances from her music. I emailed her and I said I needed help. It was like as if she just picked me up in her arms and carried me over here, because I was really in a spin and it was absolutely life-changing. The acceptable face of alcoholism is rampant, and it's people at home that are suffering behind closed doors and trying to cover up for it and, you know, get them out of there. You know, the kind of thing of the drunken uncle at a wedding, you know, and eventually someone takes him home out of the way so he doesn't make a show of the family. But then someone at home is dealing with him, with his hangover, with his illness, with his mood, with having come between him and more drink, you know, and having to deal with that. It's very hard.
There's just huge amounts of people in Ireland directly affected by, like, real harm from problem drinking, you know? If we could not rely on it as much, you know, if we could not drink as much, there would be less, you know, emotional pain in families. There would be less suicide in Ireland. You know, there would possibly be less depression. You know, there are solutions out there. There are places to go. The thing that's worth fighting for is alcohol and addiction having less power in our society.